Good morning, Timothy Maurice. Good morning. How are you, bud?
I'm awesome, man. It's really awesome. I love having conversations with you, so I'm looking forward to this one.
Oh, fantastic. So for my viewers, if I can call them that, you and I met probably about 5 or 6 years ago at an event that you were speaking about. But could you just give everybody I suppose this is a brief introduction of who you are and what you do. I've got you as an author, a speaker. You are the brain and brand show person. Your podcast, reach all over the world. So if you could just give us a brief.
I'm a kid who grew up on a farm in North Carolina on the East Coast in America. My grandfather had a 100-acre farm, and there were 4 of us, 4 homes on this farm. My uncle, my grandparents, my home, and my aunt. And, as a kid, I was just kind of like a rural guy. My family is split between New York, Washington, D.C., and North Carolina. And we're just a really down home, very kind of spiritual, grounded kind of group of people. I moved to New York later in my life, and I met one of Nelson Mandela's granddaughters. We ended up dating. I hired her when she finished school, because she was studying there in the States. She came back to South Africa, and I was like, bye, good luck. I was living my best life. And and I was like, good luck, enjoy Africa, all the best with your life. And then a year later, I took a holiday, and I decided to come visit South Africa. And I was about 30 years old, and I thought this was a once-in-a-lifetime trip. And in my head, I was going to come and visit her and, greet, because she was a lovely human being, go back to New York and live my best life. And I was just blown away with this country. And we went whitewater rafting. There were a bunch of us Black people who couldn't swim. And we took a break in the whitewater rafting experience. And the guide, who looked like this kind of guy who was chiseled from Baywatch, was like, does anybody want to go down the rapids on your back? And I was like, well, since this is a once in a lifetime trip, I'll do it. But they were like, you can't swim. I was like, good guys, it's fine. It's a once in a lifetime trip. I got a vest on. So I go down the rapids on my back. They're clapping for me. And then all of a sudden, I faint. I go out. And I wake up with them pumping water out of me. And as they're pumping water out of me, I felt that my grandfather, who I was extremely close to, who ran this farm, who taught me so much about life, I felt he passed away. And so I said, guys, I'm fine. Can we get to the nearest phone? I go and I call home to the States, and turns out that when I was underwater drowning is when he passed away. So I cut my trip short from South Africa. I flew back to the States to attend his funeral. And when I was next to his graveside, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do something radical. I'm gonna change my entire life, and I'm gonna dedicate it to you. And that's when I decided to base myself in South Africa. So I came back a couple times, tested the waters, wrote a letter to the Star newspaper, and I said I'd like to write a column about human behavior, personal branding, psychology, which is my work. And they took that column, and that column is what introduced me to this country. It was that column that introduced me to the Business Women's Association, which is where you and I met. I wrote that column for 10 years straight. I think I'm one of the longest running columnists in the country. My work is focused on looking at the psychology of influence, the psychology of human behavior, trying to make sense of the complexity of what's happening between our conscious, our unconscious mind, how our stories sit in our stakeholders' mind, how brand stories can be positioned to kind of optimize relationship with consumers. And that's what I'm interested in. And I think in our last conversation, I think why you wanted to have this is this moment was my studies in neuroscience have inspired me to think about embodied cognition, which is understanding that your body and the feelings in your body and how movement in the body can impact the brain. So I think that's a quick way to get us caught up.
Yeah, exactly, Tim. I suppose. I mean, firstly, I didn't know that the story about you physically drowning. Wow, what an amazing story! And
yeah, no, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. Like, I literally thought I was coming here for once in a lifetime trip. I was never coming back. You know, it's not so much I didn't want to come back. It was that for the same price of flying from New York to South Africa, I can go to the Bahamas 4 times, right?
wow.
I can go to Hawaii a couple times. So it didn't make sense. It's like, okay, I'm going to check it off my bucket list. I've gone to Africa. I've gone to South Africa. I'm going to the next stop. So I literally had no intentions of really coming back. I mean, I love the place, but I wasn't thinking of coming back.
Clearly, there were bigger forces at play.
Right? Exactly. Exactly.
So I was just before we jumped on this, just checking out. So your interest is in neuroscience, behavioral science, brain strategy, and as you mentioned, we met a couple of years ago at a breakfast, and I always love chatting with you because I think we've got so much in common. But one thing that really, I suppose, got to me when we met recently over a coffee, and had to walk around all over the show putting our face masks back on.
Yeah, we were social distancing.
There we go. Was when you mentioned this phenomenon in neuroscience, I suppose, where basically you use a physical activity to change parts in your brain. And I found that so fascinating because what we've been doing at Empowered for so many years, we've been saying, we help you change the way you think. By that simple action of punching through a board, changes the way you think. But when you actually put it, let's just put it in scientific terms, it really blew me away. And I suppose this is the reason why I wanted to have this chat. I suppose knowing that I've been on the right path for so long, being scientifically backed, really was really a bit of an awakening.
You were excited to know. It's a good feeling, right? It's always good to know when there's a little bit of science to back up things that we feel instinctively, which is really what science does. It's like people come up with these new scientific discoveries, and then there's some grandmother in the rural area who goes, "I knew that all along." Right? So, you know, what we were speaking about is the idea of embodied cognition, the idea that your body, and some scientists call it, your body is like your second brain. And when you move your body, the sheer process of moving your body can alter the neurochemicals and alter your hormones response. And so an example is when I smile, even if I feel like crap, if I force myself to smile, I can trigger serotonin. I can trigger and alter the mood chemicals in my brain, and I can start to feel better. It's like the power pose. If I stand up straight and I move my body in a way where I signal strength and dominance, I can start to feel that way. And that's a form of priming. Priming is a term that is really important because if I start to signal to my body that this is the direction I want to go, although I may feel like crap today, but I'm going to get up and I'm going to start, moving. I'm going to start, signaling to my brain through the actions of my body that I want to go in this direction, the brain will follow. And that's a really important dynamic because in human behavior, I really believe from an evolutionary biology perspective, there are times when the environmental condition is so challenging and the environmental spaces could leave you in darkness, could leave you in sadness, could leave you in misery because things are so challenging.